Hey friends, I'm Tony Corpin, publisher of School Transportation News. Thanks for joining us for the 20th episode of the School Transportation Nation podcast. This episode is sponsored by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. Today's tech tip is brought to you by Zonar, and our safety tip is brought to you by Safety Vision.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Hannon, Associate Editor at STN, filling in for Editor-in-Chief Ryan Gray. I'm super excited to be here, especially for the 20th episode. What an honor. A little bit later, I'll be talking with Mike Bowman, Director of Maintenance for the South Carolina Department of Education.
Yeah, Taylor, we're excited for you to be on the podcast. It's a good time having you for our 20th episode. It's amazing. We've gone 20 weeks of podcasting, so maybe we'll have you on here more. You never know.
Yeah, it's definitely different being on this side of things instead of listening.
Yeah, well, you know what? We have lots to talk about this week, but before that, shameless plug for our virtual bus technology summit on September 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. If you haven't heard about it, check it out at bustechsummit.com for more information. We've got a lot of sponsors jumping on. They're going to be providing lots of information and content about new products, get access to subject matter experts, and hear what's the latest and greatest in technology as you face all the challenges you are today in this new normal. So, Taylor, you are out there sleuthing out stories, trying to find out what the pulse of the industry is. What have you been doing lately? What are you listening to? What are you reading out there that's exciting in school transportation lately?
Well, Tony, let me tell you, it is crazy out there. I mean, every single time I talk to a new director, they just don't know what the future holds, right? You can only plan so much for right now without planning for the future. How do you plan for a future that's constantly changing? And I actually just listened to this really exciting webinar hosted by TransFinder and the New York Association for Pupil Transportation. And they kind of unpacked the New York guidance a little bit. It was 3 different school districts and 1 contractor. They were all from New York on this webinar. And it was really interesting because even though it's state guidance, right, it's still up to local decisions and what they're going to do. And a lot of them were just really looking for a little clarification on that seating capacity. So whenever feasible, if this is possible, do social distancing on a school bus, but it's still up to local districts to decide if that's going to be right for them. And a lot of the transportation directors that were on this webinar, they shared that they're going to do 50% capacity. So they're still going to be running their buses, about 22 students, but they shared that it would be so much easier if they actually just had a requirement instead of leaving it up to them to decide how to interpret the guidance.
Yeah, direction's really important. I agree with you. And it's definitely a big challenge for people as they're trying to figure out the new normal. When you look at things like the STARTS task force guidance, it's guidance, right? They're trying to help you or point you in the right direction. They can't tell you what to do. And I think everybody's looking for the easy button, and there is no easy button in this situation, right? Every situation is going to be different depending on the infection rates at a local level. Can you open? Can you not? And I think, politically, obviously, we're in a political year, so all eyes are on everyone with respect to what's going on out there. And they're not trying to make a bad decision. So they're really, under the microscope in terms of every decision's being scrutinized at those levels. And really, we're doing our best to report on that information and provide that back to you, School Transportation Nation. Taylor, you want to give me any other news updates? I think we had Governor Cuomo came out of New York and made some announcements about school.
I just gave it away, Tony. That was my line. But yeah, so the governor, Andrew Cuomo of New York, he actually just announced last week that schools in the state can now reopen. Woo! I mean, it's like a little deep breath, right? Are we getting out of this? Is this the light at the end of the tunnel? So that's every school district in the region, right? But keep in mind, this announcement does not mean schools will reopen. It's still up to local politicians and superintendents to make that call. And of course, parents still have the choice to keep their students home or send them to school. That all still lies with them. But the New York Times reported that Como will continue to monitor the infection rate, but this actually makes New York one of the few states in America that has a virus transmission low enough to reopen. I mean, that's great news, especially after things in New York weren't looking too hot. I mean, they were one of the global epicenters of the pandemic. Currently, New York is sitting around 415,000 cumulative cases, but 650 of those are active. And according to Johns Hopkins University, New York spiked in April, but has been on the decline ever since.
Yeah, I think we wish we were all on the decline in every state, California included. I hate seeing the headlines that California is number one. You don't want to be number one in coronavirus. That's definitely not the number one you want. So that's scary out there. And yeah, I think you're right on, Taylor. It's great news to see New York getting back to business, but we'll really see what it looks like once kids get back to in-person or distance learning or a hybrid of both. It's going to be different everywhere. But I know there's been a lot of legislative updates, some jobs numbers coming out. You want to give us an update on what's going on there?
Yeah, all right. So Ryan Gray did a deep dive into this last week, but he kind of gave everyone a rundown on the HEALS Act. I know lawmakers are really trying to make a decision on this, regarding that extra stimulus money for Americans as well as the unemployment benefit, but it appears that as of last Friday, they were unable to make a deal. So I'm not really sure what the future holds for the stimulus relief bill, but for more information and background on what the HEALS Act entails, definitely check out last week's podcast. As far as the economy goes, after 2 weeks of unemployment spikes, things may be looking up. Last week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the U.S. added 1.8 million jobs in July, dropping the unemployment rate to 10.2%. So in June, the unemployment rate was sitting at 11.1%. So it's getting better. But with that, Bloomberg reported that the economy has recovered less than half of the 13 million jobs since the pandemic took hold in February. And this increase in jobs kind of comes as some states proceed with reopening, while other states seem to be halting or reversing their reopening plans. I think it all kind of depends on the state and what's going on. More and more states are starting to mandate mask usage. We covered Alabama and South Carolina's mask mandates last week online. And Mike Bowman is going to give us a rundown a little bit on that mask mandate in South Carolina coming up. But 34 states currently have a usage policy where you have to use it in that state. Mississippi actually became the latest state, according to AARP, to require masks in public to help slow the spread of COVID-19. The District of Columbia and Puerto Rico have also issued mask mandates. Another current event, Florida surpassed 500,000 coronavirus cases as of last week. It now joins California as the only other state to pass 500,000 cases. So this brings the U.S. at almost 5 million cases and over 160,000 deaths. But with a spike in cases in Florida, some school districts in the state are still proceeding with in-person education for the fall. We actually just published an article on this last week on our website, and it kind of goes into detail on what some school district reopening plans look like and how they're going to relate to school transportation. So, of course, not every school district is reopening for in-person education, but some are certainly heading that direction.
Thanks for that, Taylor. If your district is going back to school in the fall, you'll want to be prepared. Here's a tech tip for you from Zonar, a leader in smart fleet management. Your school buses might have their new fleet technology already under the hood, just waiting to be found and activated. Top bus manufacturers team up with leading fleet tech providers and line install their hardware. If you have Thomas Built buses, check them for Zonar TCUs. Hardware's paid for, installation's done, and you may even qualify for Zonar's free trial subscription. Learn more at zonarsystems.com/resources/budget. That's zonarsystems.com/resources/budget. All right, Taylor, what are some of the ways that districts can bridge that digital divide and use technology effectively as they get ready to welcome students back to school in person or on the bus?
Yeah, so last episode, Ryan Gray and Tony Pollard, the transportation supervisor for Baldwin County Board of Education in Alabama, they talked about the $10 million that was allocated to the State Department of Education to equip school buses in the state with Wi-Fi routers. You know, the topic of bridging the digital divide and how school buses play a role is something that's going to be covered in the September issue of School Transportation News. But we've certainly been seeing a lot of news coverage on it and how it can help. The California State Superintendent, Tony Thurmond, announced last week a collaboration with Apple and T-Mobile to connect with students in need. They're going to be working together to fulfill orders from districts, which could connect up to 1 million students across California with iPads already equipped with high-speed internet. The release also said that 100,000 devices will be delivered by the back-to-school timeframe. And you know what's actually interesting with California is that as of last week, 38 counties were now on the state's watch list. And I wrote an article on stnonline.com about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and it was at 37 counties on the watch list. So it's definitely growing. But what this means is if your county is on the watch list for more than 3 days, you're required to roll back reopening until you're off of it for 14 consecutive days. So with that rolling back, it consists of not reopening schools for in-person education and starting the year virtually, which we have seen several schools announce, not just in California, but nationwide, that they're going for a full virtual start. California is providing some waivers to elementary schools to reopen as in-person education benefits elementary students and students with special needs the most. However, that waiver doesn't apply to counties with more than 200 cases per 100,000 people. So that would rule out 14 of the 38 counties currently on the watch list. And there's an article up on STN Online that talks about California and what transportation departments are planning for a virtual start.
Thanks, Taylor. That's really great information, giving everyone updates on what's going on around different states. And whether your district is going back in person or planning a virtual start to your school year, everyone wants to get kids back to school in the safest manner possible. And now more than ever, Safety Vision is dedicated to ensuring that happens safely. In this week's safety tip, they're going to show you how. Since school bus transportation is the first point of possible COVID-19 transmission for students, Safety Vision has introduced an onboard contact-free temperature reader hardwired into the bus for hands-free operation. It requires no driver interaction, unlike using handheld thermometers, which break the social distancing guidelines. It can read temperatures quickly, so it will not impact route times whatsoever. Their inventory is going fast, so contact Clint Breyer and his school bus team at 800-880-8855 or send them an email at schoolbussales@safetyvision.com or learn more about their suite of technology products at safetyvision.com. Yeah, I mean, technology is really important. And I think when you're facing all these COVID-19 challenges, Taylor, people are they're hunting for solutions. If that's cleaning solutions, if that's routing, GPS, contact tracing, there's just so many things that you're faced with this new normal in reopening. And we'll really see what's going to happen when schools actually reopen, because I've been seeing a lot of headlines and images around the internet. And I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing out there, but you know, there's schools reopening. There was a high school in Georgia that had a picture floating around that the kids were literally shoulder to shoulder, some with masks, some without. I mean, what could happen? You know, that's scary to me. But I think that inevitably we need to, as an industry, do our best from a school transportation standpoint. Once they get in the school, that's up to the school administrators and the teachers to monitor all those situations. But we'll do our best to be game time ready. I know you'd agree, right, Taylor?
That's right. And I've actually been thinking a lot about the localized decisions that school districts have to face right now. And on July 17th, I was watching the Student Transportation Aligned for Return to School Task Force webinar, also known as STARTS. And Tim Ammon, co-owner of the Decision Support Group and a co-manager of STARTS, he said something that I haven't really been able to shake. He said that COVID-19 is a national problem with local solutions. And you can actually listen to him talk more about this on a previous podcast episode 18. So I really discovered that meaning of localized solutions while looking into the use of hand sanitizer on school buses. And certainly since the pandemic started, which I'm sure most of you have agreed, is I've been carrying hand sanitizer with me everywhere, right? I have one in my purse, one in my car, I have one shoved in my leggings when I go on walks. Just on the off chance that I come into contact or I touch something, I want to be able to clean my hands. But actually, it's kind of a controversial topic in school transportation. New York stated in its reopening guidance that hand sanitizer is prohibited on school buses, and this includes the dispensers as well as like the little bottles brought on by drivers and attendants. Even students can't bring these on board due to flammability and combustibility concerns. So while New York prohibits dispensers, we've also been seeing lots of states are allowing them, right? The Oregon Department of Education isn't necessarily allowing the dispensers to be mounted on the school bus, but they are allowing the small handheld pumps to be carried on board. Whereas other states, for instance, Arkansas and Wisconsin, have actually permitted the use of hand sanitizer and dispensers on board. But where those dispensers be installed still remains a challenge and a question. Many readers on our Facebook page commented on a photo we posted showing the placement of one dispenser that was in the school bus stairwell and mounted against the kick plate. They discussed the potential snag hazards this poses to students, how it could easily become dislodged, and how introducing the gels to students as they climb the stairs could lead to slips with wet hands or spills. So like most of school bus operations, these are very much local decisions. And you can read more all about hand sanitizer in an article posted at stnonline.com. But even the Transportation Security Administration is allowing 12 ounces of hand sanitizer on a carry-on bag as opposed to the normal 3.4 ounces of liquid. So if you're like me and you're going to be traveling anytime soon, I definitely suggest taking the TSA up on that.
Yeah, Taylor, I'd agree with you. I'm bringing my hand sanitizer everywhere. And my wife's like, don't leave home without your mask, your sanitizer, all the things that you need these days to just live your normal life. I agree. And I think controversy is interesting on this because I could see if I'm a driver and I'm getting on the bus, you're not going to tell me I can't have hand sanitizer. Like, I'm going to protect myself, right? So maybe it's contraband hand sanitizer. I don't know. But I feel like in this day and age, people are taking such preventative measures. They want to take zero risk and, to try to prevent someone from having hand sanitizer. I could see some major pushback with that being an issue. We'll see what really happens in the field. It's great to say, but it's another thing to do. So we'll see the reality of things as that happens. Taylor, another thing we're discovering out there during this pandemic is that school transportation needs have completely changed, and they've changed quickly. And our friends at TransFinder want to be there for you. You need to have the power of multiple routing scenarios and browser-based tools. You need accurate and real-time reporting. You need an automated intelligence system to help you become faster, safer, smarter in adjusting to the ever-changing landscape covered here on the podcast. The fact is, you need to be running at super fast speed. That's where Route Finder Plus comes in. Plus is far from marginal improvement to how routing has been done and how you should be routing today. You don't want marginal, incremental change to routing. Who wants a faster horse when you can have a sports car? Swap incremental for transformational with TransFinder. Plus is your key to delivering accuracy, speed, and savings to your operation. Plus is the most powerful browser-based routing solution on the market today. Plus features include automation and optimization. Say no to incremental change. Make the transformational transition to TransFinder. Contact TransFinder today at getplus@transfinder.com and put STN podcast in the subject line and let them know we sent you. Stay tuned as Taylor Hannon interviews Mike Bullman from South Carolina's Department of Education. They're coming up next.
All right, so I have Mike Bowman here, and he's the Director of Maintenance for the South Carolina Department of Education, as well as the current president of the South Carolina Association of Pupil Transportation. Mike has over 40 years in pupil transportation, and he actually got started driving when he was still in high school. What school bus was that again, Mike?
It was a international chassis with a superior body.
Okay.
For those that have been in the industry a long time, maybe they can remember the old Superiors.
All right, and South Carolina is actually pretty unique when it comes to its school bus fleet. So, Mike, let me get this right. The South Carolina Department of Education owns and maintains the state's entire school bus fleet. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We own approximately 5,400 buses total. We've got one CNG, 217 propane, and the remaining are diesel. And we do have one little other unique part about us, and that's one school boat.
Oh, all right. And so all the fueling, maintenance, that's all provided by your staff then?
That's correct. We have 42 maintenance shops across the state with approximately 375, 380 staff members, and they perform everything from the fueling to all the routine maintenance, tire service, everything, turnkey.
Wow, you guys certainly have your hands full over there. So you might recall hearing about the South Carolina Department of Education in the August issue of School Transportation News. We talked with David Brewington, the senior technician at the SCDE, and he kind of gave a rundown on prepping fleets for the upcoming school year and what to expect. David is featured as one of the 2020 Garage Stars, but what can you share, Mike, regarding fleet startup and the importance of ongoing preventive and predictive maintenance to keep buses in tip-top shape?
Well, as you guys know, when really all this sort of got started in mid-March, when schools decided to close, we really didn't change a lot of what we were doing initially. We gave it some thought because we really didn't know how long school was going to be closed. But once we realized that it looked like it was going to be closed some length of time and possibly not start back up, we began really transitioning from what we would normally do in the summer, our routine maintenance, into a much more involved process. We circled back and touched on some things that we really hadn't had a chance to get a hold of, maybe some engines and that sort of stuff. We also started doing a lot of predictive maintenance. And it really gave us an opportunity to sort of shore up some loose ends in terms of maintenance really across the state. So we really feel good where we're at with maintenance right now. Of course, there were some additional challenges along the way, but again, we feel like that we're in a really good spot right now.
Okay, and what kind of general advice can you give, Mike, for those districts that have been parked for months and potentially in some places they'll continue to be?
Yeah, well, we've really been working hard and concentrating on things like fuel quality, for instance, making sure that our fuel tanks are topped off. That not only includes the fuel tanks on all the buses and the vehicles, but certainly the underground storage tanks as well. We want to make sure that they're treated against bacteria, those sorts of things. We also want to make sure that we're trying to keep the interior of the buses to prevent long-term things like mold and mildew. Obviously, it gets rather humid here in South Carolina, so we do a lot of things to try to prevent that. But again, we feel like one of the most important things we can do right now is trying to maintain fuel quality. And actually operating the buses periodically really, we feel like is going to go a long way to help preventing some issues at startup as well.
So something that David also mentioned in the Garage Stars feature in August is the two most important things to keeping fleets in working order are inspections and a preventative maintenance schedule. Now, you kind of talked about the preventative maintenance, but can you further elaborate on the importance of inspections and how to keep up with them amid COVID-19?
Of course, we really feel that a solid inspection program is really the cornerstone of any good maintenance program. For a long time here in South Carolina, it was sort of unfortunate that we were operating a rather old fleet. And so we felt like that because of that, we needed to really inspect buses more frequently than a lot of other people may need to. And so it sort of got us in a mindset, and we saw the importance of good, solid inspections during that time. It not only ensures a much safer bus, it helps ensure that the bus remains as the OEM intended, because, again, we can spot things or see things that not only might be happening to the bus mechanically, but that someone may have tried to, district personnel may try to change or modify or install something that otherwise needs to, not be there.
Okay, and I saw the state superintendent, Molly Spearman, approved 67 district reopening plans. So it looks like South Carolina then is ramping up for a fall start?
Yes, we have 79 school districts, not counting things like charter schools and that, but 79 school districts that we actually provide buses and service to. We feel like every one of those will be ready to go soon, if not a couple of weeks into this month, maybe the day after Labor Day. Again, we're ready to go, and we feel like most of the schools are. They've made some modifications. We continue to meet 2 or 3 times a week with various administrative personnel across the state to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're all looking through the same set of binoculars, if you will, just to try to get a handle on what's going on and to make sure that we're all prepared when school actually does get to start.
hmm Yeah, I'm sure it's a challenge keeping up with all the different district plans and everything. Definitely check out more on fleet startup and maintenance in the August issue of School Transportation News. But South Carolina is actually one of those states we talked about earlier that requires masks now in public school facilities, which include school buses. So does that kind of change your operation at all, Mike? I know you said before that drivers are employed by each district within the SCDE, but what about your mechanics, at the 42 bus facilities across the state? How are you ensuring physical distancing in the garage?
Yeah, we've changed some protocols and some SOPs. We don't require masks during normal working conditions. If a technician is working on a bus in his or her stall or bay, we don't require a mask during that time. However, we do have some things in place, such as we want to limit technicians to 2 on the interior of the bus, and really only 1 unless that technician needs some assistance. And while they're in there, we're asking them to wear a mask. We're also doing things like asking the technicians not to walk in front of fans, AC outlets, those kinds of things, doorways or breezeways where, a breeze may be coming in that would actually transmit that over to someone else. So, but other than that, we're not really having to do a lot. We ask them also not to congregate in things like break rooms or break areas, that sort of thing. And so far seems to be working well. I visited a couple of shops this week, and again, I wore my mask. We do check temperatures when coming in, and so far, so good. It's working fairly well and not really causing a big issue for us.
That's good to hear. One more question, but I'm going to make it a good one. So how is technology playing a role in the bus garage? Are you guys looking at virtual training, anything like that?
Yes. As you know, this industry has changed quite a bit. As little as 15 to 20 years ago, you had everything mechanical, engines, transmissions, and now we're looking at everything digital, multiplex wiring, telematics, those kinds of things. And so not only has that impacted the vehicle side of the industry, it's also impacted the training side, as you said. We've made sure that we've installed cameras and microphones and all those things at technicians' work bays. So it gives us an opportunity to meet with them remotely, virtually, as well as hold training sessions. We've also developed several online training modules, both for our technicians and our driver trainers. And that falls over into the driver training portion, which we do provide that service to the districts as well. So yes, we've moved into that arena in sort of a big way.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I think technology is certainly becoming on the forefront, especially in student transportation with the use of virtual training and that sort of thing. So thank you so much for sharing.
All right. Well, hey, Taylor, I appreciate you drilling Mike with all those questions. Now it's my turn. I'm going to jump in. Mike, you want to give us a sense what's going on with the budget in South Carolina? Are you guys seeing up, down, flat? Are you buying new buses? What are you doing out there? What's that look like right now?
Well, Tony, right now we're sort of flat. We're being a little cautious, optimistically cautious. We think we're going to be okay. We're continuing to really go about business as usual right now. We still continue to buy buses as we normally would have been. We have not loaded all of our budget at this time. Just again, as I said earlier, we're trying to be a little cautious, but we're optimistic that things are going to be okay once school gets going and really we see how things are going. As you know, ridership will probably be down initially. So that will lend itself to saving a little bit of funds, hopefully in fuel and those kinds of things.
Now, what about other things like cleaning protocols on the buses? Is your team doing that? Are you having the drivers do that? Do you have some professional team that's coming in and doing that? You want to give us a little color on how you're dealing with the health and sanitization, disinfecting, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's really a shared or mutual program, Tony. Not only is our SDE employees performing some of that, we will do that when buses are brought in for maintenance or service. We will make sure that those buses are disinfected before they go back to the district. District staff are also disinfecting buses a minimum of twice per day using electrostatic sprayers. The Department of Education purchased each school district's parking location 2 electrostatic sprayers. So they're going to get a 2.25 gallon backpack sprayer along with a handheld sprayer. All these sprayers are cordless, so they're quite portable, and they'll be able to just utilize those out on the lot without any power outlets or anything like that. We're also going to provide the school districts with the disinfectant product that goes in those cleaners. We have really guaranteed them that we're going to provide that through December, and that may go longer. Again, we will sort of just play this by ear and see how this goes as school continues. But right now, again, twice a day for the disinfecting, and then between trips, each of the drivers will wipe down those high contact areas such as handrails, sidewalls, seats, seat backs, those kinds of things.
Have you guys considered hand sanitizer on the bus? I know there's been a lot of discussion about if it's allowed, if it's not. Where are you guys at on the hand sanitizer side of things?
Yeah, Tony, we meet and really confer on that and some other topics weekly, and that's a big one. Most of our districts right now are in agreement with us to not allow the sanitizer on there. We conferred early with our state's health organization and got some feedback, and we really looked at all the potential pitfalls or issues that may come from having that on the bus versus what it could actually help in terms of mitigating the virus. So we looked at, again, things like mounting locations, what's going to happen, how are you going to control the actual use of it, it's spilling in the floor, causing a trip or slip hazard, how are you going to control the students using it, are they going to get it in their eyes or in their mouth, and those sorts of things. So really, after a lot of debate, we've decided that we're going to start school without allowing the bulk containers of hand sanitizer.
Got it. Have you guys been discussing the application of physical barriers? I've seen different products that are like, curtains between the bus seats to kind of create separation, things of that nature. Have you guys considered those sorts of things, or is that illegal in the state?
It's not technically illegal per se, and we have talked about it. But again, at this time, we've opted not to go in that direction. We're kind of going to let the industry sort of dictate and determine how it's going to evolve. We feel like right now that it's still a little early. By some definitions, it could be infringing on some FMVSS regulations and those sorts of things. So we really feel like it's best right now if we just sort of start school with none of those physical barriers. And again, face mask on the students, face shield or face mask for the driver. And so we feel like that, along with some really sound disinfecting practices, we feel pretty good about it.
So, at the top, Taylor brought up that you'd been in the industry for 40 years. Yeah, we've never seen anything like this, and obviously huge challenge ahead of us. What do you think is your biggest challenge at this point to kind of take that next step and provide safe transportation? What are you guys faced with? Is there anything like you could leave our listeners with, kind of just a last thought on that?
Sure. I think some of the biggest challenges are going to be obviously routing. I think routing is going to be one of those things that will require a lot of input and creativity. As you've said, no one has been through a pandemic before. And certainly, I think there's going to have to be a lot of concessions made, probably with routing, in terms of what current regulations are versus what they may need to be, at least initially. And that may translate into longer or at least different hours in terms of service hours related back to the maintenance and operation of a school bus shop. Because again, I think that's going to possibly impact routes, maybe start times, end times, those sorts of things. And it could also possibly impact how the bus is operated during the day. So there could be some extra trips in there that otherwise wouldn't be there. So I think those are some of the real big challenges, that and making sure that the disinfecting protocols are really put in place and are really performed as they should be. So it's going to be a constant training and sort of just oversight with that part of it.
Well, thanks, Mike, for giving us a view into what your day looks like and what you guys are facing there in South Carolina. Appreciate all your wisdom you've shared with our audience, and thank you for coming on. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Mike, for a very insightful discussion. Thanks to Taylor Hannon for filling in for Ryan Gray this week. And a special thanks to our sponsors, TransFinder, Zonar, and Safety Vision. Friends, we hope to see you again on the next podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can always email us at info@stnmedia.com to tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Questions, topics you want addressed for us to discuss. Also visit stnonline.com for the latest news and perspectives on school buses, coronavirus, and school startup. We'll see you next time.